Aggretsuko Season 3 has arrived, and with it brings a new wave of adult struggles, but this time focusing a little more on the romantic sides with also something maybe not everyone's going to relate with, but even if it doesn't directly affect you, you can see the idea of fame and how people very much take things far too seriously with social media influence and obviously idols and just all the other individual things that can make fame, even the smallest bits of fame, very toxic and frightening for anyone to deal with. And I've said it since Season 1 that I think that this is a show that I could easily see myself watching 10 seasons or more before I could potentially grow stale of it. Obviously, that statement is kind of backed by its shorter runtime. You only have 10 episodes, many of which can be under 15 minutes, so it does lend itself to have 100 episodes a lot more easy than your traditional episodes for animated production. But Season 3 delivered on some dark, twisted, and very interesting themes that Aggretsuko has been doing a great job at in terms of presenting the adult world in a very cute package. And that's something I've always digged about this show, is that it understands that you can do this contrasting idea where you have very mature topics backed by an almost childlike presentation, and that's something that's always caught my interest when you have the most dark and gritty thing, but it's actually a pretty simple story by design, or you do the reverse in the case of Aggretsuko, where yeah, it does have its cutesy moments, it does have its death metal growls, but at the end of the day, it's pretty twisted in terms of its portrayal of society, and they do a remarkable job at dumbing it down in terms of putting them into cute animal characters, or in the case of Tone, very, well, not so cute characters, but you gotta love the big guy. And it's nice to see how this season hasn't lost its touch, and each season has done something different with the idea of society and adult life, and how they continuously find new ways to take these characters in new territories. Of course, you will have certain things like Hsieh kind of loving Retsuko. We're definitely going to touch upon that quite a bit. But for the most part, Season 3 did completely new things while introducing one of my new favorite characters, Hsieh, who I thought was a great addition, voiced by ProZD, who did a remarkable job at delivering someone who you thought was real big businessman, but really just wanted to create an idol group, and you gotta love him for that. This season has been really interesting to me, and watching it in pretty much one binge, I did over 2 nights here, it was so great to see what I loved about this series find new ways to keep it fresh while keeping true to what made it great in the first place. And for those who haven't seen Season 3, I will put up a spoiler warning when we get into spoiler territory, but for now you're safe, don't have to worry. This season, I think, did 2 things really right. The first of which is by introducing a new plot element and new characters that we have yet to be introduced to, with the second being the potential love interest between, of course, Hsieh as well as Retsuko. And to begin, I think I really want to touch upon the new elements, which is the whole idea that Retsuko isn't in that great of shape. When is she? But the whole idea that she's just so broke down on her luck, and then what happens, of course, because she gets a little bonus cash from mommy and ends up bumping into a car and having to, well, gotta pay that back. And I thought the aggressiveness, because you knew it wasn't going to go too bad, but you knew it was still hilarious to see her shake, because that's everyone's worst fear when they're an adult and struggling for money, or, you know, you're doing okay, you think you can handle it, and then an unexpected expense comes, and you just feel like such a clumsy failure. And I like the idea of her having to work off this debt because she can't realistically pay it off, and the whole idea of the whole idol group, which I thought was great, because the one thing that kind of caught me off guard at the beginning was the lack of death metal karaoke, which was kind of the gimmick and gag that a lot of people got drawn into with Season 1. But there definitely was enough moments of the aggressiveness, don't get me wrong, but to begin the season, it felt me like it was taking me in new territory that I wasn't sure if I was going to love, but quickly did they prove that I wanted to see an idol group in Aggretsuko. Now, we're going to have to get into more spoiler territory here, so if you don't care about spoilers, obviously carry on, or just go watch the anime, because honestly, it's fantastic and you should watch it. But we're going to be getting into some pretty spoiler territory, because I don't know what I can really talk about without going too heavy into it. And this season is honestly my favorite, and I think each season has gotten progressively better with Aggretsuko, and that's something that's really made me happy, because each season has taken it in new territory, and the idea of this idol group and a girl who usually is working a dead-end job and is trying to find her place on Earth, she's trying to find out, what is it in life that I want? In last season, she thought she really wanted this romance, she wanted this to be a wife, she wanted to have a husband, she wanted to have kids, and not work at the office, but then eventually realized that the current person she's with, it's pretty good right now, but it's not going to be a long-time thing that she can be happy with. So what do you do with her character in Season 3? Well, you throw her into a new dead-end job that she has no interest in, apparently a failing idol group with 3 fans, and you have to turn that on its head. And I thought that was going to be an interesting way to keep it fresh going forward, as if they were planning on doing something like, hey, we're going to take this and we're going to say, hey, she's going to be a really good accountant for this group, and maybe over a couple of seasons we'll see him blow up. And then quickly, we introduced death metal to the group, and I was like, Aggretsuko, you dog. I love it. Because who would have thought that she would be a part of this group? And yes, she would be a part of it if there was some sort of rock element from it from day one, but they did a clever directing choice of keeping it very poppy and idolish as she then grows her fame. And what's interesting is how this anime feels like it's doing things in a very realistic sense despite them all being these animals, which I've always said that you have anthropomorphic designs or just straight up animal designs in the case of Aggretsuko. You can take real world issues and really present them in a way that people who would traditionally say, why is this an issue? We're all human. The typical bullshit you always hear people use online. Here, they can't say that because they're looking at a red panda or they're looking at a pig or vice versa, and they know it's completely different, despite them all being a part of the animal species, which is a very clever way to present social issues or just anything else that can cause people heartache. The idea of fame and things like that is something that I don't have direct connections with, but also I kind of do, because as soon as you put anything online, you put your face online, you make videos online, you're going to have people who will really, really love you and really, really hate you. And that hate can drive a lot of people insane, and people say you have to get thick skin, you have to just deal with it, but in the case of idols, it gets even worse because you're putting yourself physically out there, not just on an online presence. And the idea of someone who starts stalking her and really hates Retsuko, but you think is just in love with her, because that's what you typically associate with those overly creepy stalkers who take pictures and follow you home and things like that. There's tons of great anime productions that have portrayed, but Aggressive Retsuko went in this interesting way where they said, you know what? We're going to do a reverse, because if this was a group that had a very cult following, they weren't really big before Retsuko joined and started marketing them better and then the whole genre shift, we have to do something where there would naturally be fans who would be pissed off about the change. And the whole idea that you have this slimy bastard who cashes in on these coupons for a handshake, so she has to sit there uncomfortably as he ridicules her and insults her as he wears this creepy getup. It's such a brilliant but disturbing choice, and this is where Aggretsuko got more dark than I thought I'd ever see this. There's literally blood, there's literally attempted murder, there is stalking, and there is the fear of not knowing if you're going to make it home at night, so your boss and the other idols have to basically have a bat in their hand ready to defend you. It's actually insanely disturbing what they're able to accomplish, but it's such a realistic thing that anyone in the music industry, the idol industry, or the film industry, anyone with some sort of fame where they can put themselves out there, it's so easy for those people to think that they have this connection, that they have to love them or they have to hate them and they don't deserve life. And the way they're able to portray this was such dramatic directing. We've seen dramatic, don't get me wrong. Season 2 had a lot of great moments with its new characters, but it went a step above, and it definitely got under my skin, and I wasn't sure what they were building up to, what they were planning to do. And when you see the moments where just constantly you have Monica saying like, hey, you gotta be careful, and Retsuko kind of shoving it off because she's new to the scene. She doesn't realize how dangerous this can be. She's kind of sheltered in a lot of ways about the real world society, which is the brilliance of the formula, because she's oblivious like most people are when they get thrown into situations, and it naturally makes sense that a girl who has no connection with fame would kind of take this whole stalker thing a little too lightly. What got me the most was that I honestly thought she was going to get stabbed. I thought they're going to go the direction of a stabbing than maybe just like court cases, because it felt like they're getting really, really serious. What I didn't expect was our man Hsieh to recognize that something was wrong and that he was able to get damaged himself, which then the blood splatters on her, and basically it was one of the best scenes, if not the best scene, the anime has seen to date. Because you have something that feels so real, as if it wasn't just some gimmicky aspect that decided to randomly throw a potential murder route in it. No, it's like that naturally was built up, an idol group that had no real change for so long and it had 5 fans and then it blew up with a different genre shift. There would be someone naturally who could take that very, very bad and consider it as if you are a virus to this group and I need to take it and cleanse it with my own 2 hands. And rather than it feeling like a damsel in distress moment, it felt like a real moment where naturally if you have a stalker, you shouldn't have to deal with it alone. You should be able to rely on those connections. And I think Retsuko was trying to do it a little too much by herself, and it was great to have someone who's naturally cared for her, not in a creepy way, but just, you know, he didn't have a lot of self-confidence himself, and was able to take that into his own two hands. And while he did insert himself afterwards and really made her mad, it was nice to see how they're able to take a relationship I thought was doomed to fail and progress it and potentially, over the seasons, build it into something interesting. And that's where I want to jump into the romance aspect, because the Haida relationship I've never really understood up until now. I thought this was just a guy who thought she had a pretty face and just didn't have confidence to ask her out. And when they introduced a new love interest for him, I thought, here's the opportunity. Progress it in a way and do something like season 2 where realizing that, hey, I shouldn't chase after her, she's not good for me, like maybe we would be good, but just clearly she's not interested. And then they started progressing it in such a way that I was like, oh, he's really not over her. And I was wondering, like, is there any real way that they can make him and Retsuko end up together? And the idea that this girl is really trying so hard. And I thought they did a great job in not making her seem like a bad person, but really is the same for him as he is for Retsuko. She just really wants to date him, is doing everything, but she's doing the opposite of him, where she's actually putting her foot forward, making moves. It's just, he's very nervous and doesn't know what he wants. And the interesting thing about her is because they're not dating, she doesn't take things overly personal, but she is disturbed that he seemingly is seeing two girls at once from her point of view. And then as the series gets rolling and you see that kind of like moment where he puts his life on the line for her, it's understandable why you see these things, and especially when Haida starts discussing like the first time that he saw Retsuko fill up the water from the office looking very terrified like she was doing something wrong. It gives it a reason to think that people aren't perfect, and then he starts observing her more and more and becomes really good friends with her. But unfortunately for him, every time he tries to ask her out for dinner, she takes it as just like a offer, not really a date invitation. And the brilliance of ending the season on them going out for dinner, I think is a great moment to really step the relationship forward into new territory, because this is a show that understands that, hey, not everyone's going to be perfect together. Season 2 was all about that, where you have a perfect relationship at the start, but not going to be perfect in the future. And maybe Haida and Retsuko's relationship wasn't perfect at the start. I mean, he's been attempting this for years. But I think it's very clear after this season that he's someone who cares for her and has a lot to learn. Like the fact that he barged in and dragged her out of her room when she was at her lowest. While she did need that, there's definitely better ways to handle that. I thought it was great that they're able to portray such a low moment in her life and how they kind of balanced that karaoke scene. It was just really heartwarming to see that they weren't just magically saying, oh, he saved her life, she loves him, but rather she's willing to go out to dinner with him at this point. And that slow burn could be stale, and I thought it was a little stale with last season, but season 3 kicks it up a notch and brings them to a great point where season 4 onwards, I think there could be a blossoming relationship. I really was all for Retsuko's relationship last season, and then I was crushed, but understood it had to end. But now I'm like, you know what, my man? Go ahead. I believe in you now, and even if it takes a couple more seasons, I think this would be an interesting relationship. And when they do get together, it'd be interesting to see the obstacles that they would have to face. But I will say probably the funniest and most unexpected aspect of this season is Komiya being the biggest fan of Retsuko. I thought that was going to be a blackmail route. It became one of the most wholesome / creepy things ever, and I absolutely ate it up. Or even just the whole Ton situation where he was trying to buy Retsuko out, so he actually did a really nice fatherly move. Hey, I'll pay off your debt and, come work for me, because he doesn't know how to talk. And I think he really does care for Retsuko and wants her to stick around, but does it in a very aggressive way. So she kind of says, screw you, this is my time, I'm going back to being an idol. This was just a great season. It just progresses better and better each time, and I think the reason it feels that way is because they're always doing something new with the formula and never keeping it stale and repetitive. I'm really excited for season 4. Overall, this was a great season, and I'm really excited to see where they take the series going forward, but definitely the darkest and most twisted, and I love that because it really felt mature with its unique direction that it took on the animated formula, which you traditionally don't see in Japanese-style animated production. You see it a lot with Western stuff when they really want to get dark and gritty, but a lot of times you're stuck with the school setting, so having an office setting kind of lends to new possibilities. If you saw season 3 of Aggretsuko, let me know your thoughts down below, and if you enjoyed the video, of course, leave a like to show your support and hit that subscribe button if you have been new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.